Yeah. Hey. Yeah, it's interesting as a father when your child becomes sick because you, up to that point of their life, as a parent, you try to do everything you can to protect your child, to shield your child, to as you mentioned, raise them and direct them in the way that you feel that they should be raised. And in doing so, you make medical decisions. You make day-to-day, boo-boo and owie decisions, and and how you're going to treat those things. But it becomes interesting when you get to a hospital setting and you've gone from I'm the person who's making the decisions, or my wife is the person who's making the decisions, or we're making them as a couple,
Hmm.
to we have to now turn that over to somebody else
Yep.
because it's a situation or a condition that we don't have an understanding of. And there's nothing that me putting a band-aid on and maybe a little neosporin and give it a kiss on the forehead is going to call it a day.
Hmm.
And that's the case that where my wife and I found ourselves in back in 2019. We thought my daughter had the flu. We So I live in the United States in Michigan, and springtime in Michigan, weather is kind of all over the map. It's trying to decide whether the snow wants to get more or if it wants to get less, if it wants to melt, if it wants to freeze. And as you might imagine, that plays hell on your sinuses.
Hmm.
And so my daughter kept coming up to me, oh, I got a scratchy throat, or, my, I'm having I got a little stuffy nose, or, so I'm like, well, and I told her, I'm like, well, baby, it's springtime in Michigan. That's not uncommon. Here's some medication or whatever it was. And okay, buckle up, let's go to school.
Hmm.
But so we're also kind of tall people. I'm 6'3". My youngest son is 6'5".
Wow.
My oldest son is 6'3". My wife is 5'9". We're taller individuals than many. And my daughter was going through a growth spurt at the same time, and she kept coming in for a couple days in a row. Daddy, my legs really hurt. I'm like, well, baby, you're going through a growth spurt. That's to be expected. And like, remember, Mama just took you to the store, and you had to get a whole bunch of new clothes. Oh yeah, 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 that's right. And so, um, we really just kind of played it off. It's not that we were ignoring the warning signs; we just didn't know that they were warning signs.
Yep.
We thought this was everyday stuff, right? Your kid gets the sniffles, you do the best to medicate them, and you move on with life, right? Their legs are sore because of growing pains. You do the best you can. You medicate them, and you move on with life. And so we thought we were doing all the right things, and we were, because we had no way of knowing
Hmm.
um, that the issue that she was dealing with would rear its head in about 48 hours after this. My daughter loves to sing, and she was participating in her school talent show, and she was singing a song, and she got done, but she sounded just off that night. And I was like, well, yeah, again, she's been complaining of stuffy nose and a sore throat. And, for anybody who does any type of singing, they'll automatically recognize, yeah, if you're going to be a little bit off your game if you've got a stuffy nose and you've got a sore throat. It's not going to be the same. So anyway, we headed across state the next morning to go to see my in-laws, and which is, they live over by the Flint, Michigan area. And we went over there to visit and say hi, and spend the weekend with them. And all of a sudden, my daughter couldn't put pressure on her legs. Her legs were just hurting. She had stopped eating, she had stopped drinking, because everything was just feeling so bad. And my mother-in-law has been a nurse for 25 years, and she was watching what was going on. And she said, if this continues into morning, then we need to take her to the doctor. She's because I'm not convinced that this is just the flu.
Hmm.
And I went, oh, okay. And so you're like, okay, we'll see how things go. And that night I had bought her some Gatorade, because she wasn't drinking, like I said, not drinking, not eating. I at least wanted her to try and replenish some electrolytes, right? Try and replace some of the things that she wasn't getting, or maybe that her body was letting go of. Well, the next morning she had only drank maybe about 4 ounces, if that. And that had made her nauseous. But her legs were, now she could no longer stand on her legs. The pain was so intense.
Yeah.
So we packed her up and we took her to the hospital, Children's Hospital in Grand Rapids, Michigan, which is, at the time, I don't know if it still is, I haven't checked, but at the time it was the rated third best children's hospital in the nation. And so we had learned a long time ago with my oldest son that anytime we live in a small country town, and unless you needed a Band-Aid or maybe a cast, you didn't go to that hospital. Okay. Excuse me. So you just didn't go there unless you absolutely had to. And so I was like, well, we're not driving all the way home. We're going to go to this children's hospital. It's one of the best. They'll know what's going on. We're still hoping that it's the flu. We're going to get her an IV, get her topped off. Her body will come back around and we'll go home. We get her to the hospital. The doctor says, I don't know what it is, but it's not the flu. And he started running like a battery of tests immediately.
Sorry to interrupt. What was your mindset at that point?
Very confused. Because you don't know where you're going. It's one thing as a parent, you think you have sure footing when you're going to make a decision and you know that you're going to go do this thing, right? Okay. Or, like anything in life, if you make a decision and, you're confident behind the decision, you step forward with sure footing. I didn't have that sure footing. I didn't know what was going on with my child. The doctors were, not that he wasn't communicating with me, but he was a younger doctor, and I'm pretty sure this was, I don't want to say it was his first shift in the ER, but I don't think it was, I can't be positive either. And I say that only half jokingly because a few minutes later, he came back and he goes, well, it's not MS. And I went, I'm sorry, what? And he goes, well, yeah, we can take MS off the table now. I'm like, when was MS on the table? Were you going to talk to us about this? But he was a young guy. He was trying really hard. He was trying so hard to be nice and kind and caring. I mean, maybe not assign the brand new doctors to the ER, their first night, have them work with somebody if there's any medical health practitioners listening out there. But that went from being confused to now being scared, because we went from a position of being unsure to feeling like we were floating in the complete unknown, because we didn't know what was going on. And it wasn't for about another half hour, 40 minutes later, that we found out that it was in fact a condition called Guillain-Barré syndrome, which attacks the central nervous system, and it affects many people in many different ways. There's a couple of different variants of the Miller. She had the Miller-Fisher variant, which attacks the body differently in its form of Guillain-Barré than just straight Guillain-Barré. But we ended up getting admitted to the hospital that night. Now, originally we were told that we would be 1-2 weeks at tops in the hospital, and that not to worry, this can be handled pretty easily. Now that we know what it is, there's a like a set routine of how to approach it. And it was one of those good news, bad news situations, right? You had a good news that we know what it is. Yeah. The bad news is we're going to be here for a couple of weeks. Life's going to get delayed for a couple of weeks, but on the grand scheme of things, 2 weeks, we'll get this, we'll get this A-okay. 2 weeks turned into 97 days. 2 weeks turned into her being paralyzed from the neck down. She was on, she had a feeding tube because she couldn't swallow. She had had to have breathing assistance because she was having a lot of breathing issues and lung issues, and had to have an emergency lung puncture surgery to drain fluids out of her lungs. Ended up about 1.5 liters of infected fluid. But you've ever seen split pea soup?
Yeah.
That's what color it was.
Wow.
It was horribly infected, and to this day, she's only about 85% recovered. That's where the doctor feels that she's plateaued. That's the best she's going to get, and we're running at about 1.25 lungs right now. So fortunately, we didn't have any plans for her to be a long distance runner, so I think we're going to be okay. But it's very trying as a parent to go through this
Mhm.
because there's a lot of uncertainties. And every time something negative happened, because for 97 days, my wife and I didn't leave the hospital. I left twice. I was there 95 days. She was there 97 days.
Mhm.
We pretty much didn't leave the hospital for anything. It was like our own version of COVID quarantine before there was a COVID quarantine. We pre-gamed COVID in 2019. Um, but it's really rather difficult on your psyche because, as a parent, you want to handle these things. As a father, I want to take care of these things. And here I am having to turn over all this decision making to, not that I was completely out of the loop on things. The doctors did their best to, they were wonderful at explaining these things to us, what was going on and why. But you still feel at a loss because even though they're doing their best to explain to you, these are some highly technical things that they're talking about and what they're going to do and why they're going to do it. And so, you realize pretty quickly that this is outside your pay grade. And you realize pretty quickly that you are here as a cheerleader now. Because that's all I can do. All I can do is like, hey, honey, we're going to push through this. We're going to do great. You're going to do awesome. You're going to nail this. There is no role as a parent to take the lead. You are relegated to not even second string. You're like third string, end of the bench, guard of the water bottle, tackle anybody who comes near it. You're just there holding hands going, all right, let's push through. Let's do this. But it's also difficult as a father because as a father, I want to protect.
Yep.
And I can't do that. That's kind of, and it's not that it's, like you had a choice in things, but it's kind of been taken away from you where you've tried to do all these good things and you've tried to implement these safety nets in your family and the way that your family does things, right? And those are gone now and it's not by any chance or choice. It's just happened. And dealing with that, it brings up a lot of, it brings up a lot of emotional issues because now you're struggling. Now for me, for one, I already had anxiety going into it. I was already medicated for anxiety. My anxiety went through the roof in the hospital, especially in the ICU, because every time the machine beeped, you were scared that something else bad was happening.
Exactly.
And anytime a doctor walked into the room holding a clipboard without a smile on their face, you automatically assume it's bad news. And when you have stayed, because we were going from the regular hospital from the rehab, and that's what I call the rehab hospital. We went from the normal floors on at the children's hospital to the intensive care unit floors. And we went from the intensive care unit to the rehab hospital so she could learn they could work with her to help her learn how to walk again, how to hold spoons and forks again, going back we kept on bouncing back and forth between the rehab and ICU, rehab and ICU. And after about the third trip into the ICU, I told my wife, I said, I don't think I can take this anymore. I can't come back here. Because walking into the ICU for the third time, that was brutal. Yep. That was brutal because not that it was in my control and not that there was anything that I could do about it, but you feel like a kind of a failure as a parent. Like, what have I done so wrong that we're here again? And you're not doing anything wrong. You're doing what the doctors are asking of you. You're doing everything that you can to try and help your child and assist your child. But there's the complete feel of failure. Mm. And that is a heavy mark to take as a father, to feel like you have let down your child in such a way, and that you have failed your child in such a way that we have to come back here again. And then during that stay, have to have an emergency surgery for your daughter and almost lose your daughter. And that's a rough ticket to punch. That was never the card in all my I wanted to collect and all the things that I could have collected. That's not the card I wanted to collect. Was take your daughter to the ICU and almost lose her card. that was a hard emotional one for me, because that's the night that when we got home from the hospital, that I saw in nightmares for months on end. I saw that night replayed over and over and over again. Every night when I would go to bed, I didn't sleep for months. I couldn't sleep. I I would get up and I would go check on my daughter in her room, make sure that she was okay. You don't realize it though, as a parent, but you're experiencing trauma, an emotional trauma. There's mental trauma that's happening. And we don't think about it often, especially as men, but uh, you know, you think of PTSD as only being for soldiers who have gone off to war and who have experienced the horrific things that they've seen firsthand in those battle arenas. But we experience PTSD at home too, and in different ways. And not realizing that, and not realizing how to handle all of that, it becomes difficult to know how to move forward and where to go and what to do and who to talk to, and and how do I address this, because the world around me tells me that I'm a man, and that I'm the head of my house, and I'm the provider, and I'm the one who's supposed to stand up strong and be the example. And the world around us tells us that it's a weakness to accept help when it comes to mental health. And so all of that kind of plays into your decision making on what you do and how you do, or even
How you
why.
express yourself. Yeah, even how you
Yeah,
express yourself as well. Yeah.
yeah, absolutely. It becomes very difficult to know how to move forward and how to adjust it. And it wasn't that I wasn't listening to my wife, because my wife and I talked about it several times, and she had said, my wife's an exceedingly intelligent woman, and very caring and very perceptive. And she knew that I was struggling and that I was having issues. And we had talked about it several times. And she kept asking me, well, do you think you should go talk to somebody? Maybe you should go talk to somebody. How about today? Can I schedule you an appointment today? And each time I'd play it off as, no, no, I'm fine. I'm fine. I'm a man. I got this. When I didn't have this. I was nowhere close to having this. But because of, the stigmas that are attached and the societal impacts that are attached to it, as a man, I thought that I could handle this on my own. If I just, you just buckle down, you put on your boots in the morning, you go to work, you do what you got to do, you get through your day. When you come home at night, everything will be fine. It will all fall back into place. And I think that's probably where I was at for probably about a good 6 months after we came home. I wasn't sleeping. I had my meds dialed up. I went back to the doctor, and he's like, well, yeah, I can adjust your meds a little bit, make them a little stronger, but don't you think you should go talk to somebody? I'm like, nah, let's just try the meds. Let's just dial those bad boys up. Let's see where we get with that. You know, but what got me into therapy was my daughter's rehabilitative doctor. So we still see him on a monthly basis to follow up. My daughter is probably disabled for the rest of her life. She doesn't have the muscle strength or stamina to do what other girls who are 14 years of age can do. School started back just a little bit ago, and we're in a hybrid school situation. She can't go to school all day. She physically cannot, just doesn't have the stamina for it. So we do school from home from 9 in the morning till 11:30. And at 11:30, I take her to school, and she goes from school from noon to 2:30 every day. So she's actually only physically in the building for like 3 hours, but and she's got her nice little disabled card, so we can park her closer to buildings, and she can get in a little easier. Doesn't have as far to walk because her legs get tired so fast, because the muscle and joints are attacked through Guillain-Barré syndrome, or as I'll probably refer to it the rest of this conversation as GBS, because it's just easier to say.
Yeah, exactly.
But so we're dealing with all of this, and we go to see this doctor monthly, and he knows our family. We've spent a lot of time with this guy. We saw him almost every day in the hospital, almost every day in the rehab hospital, almost every day in the ICU. and then at getting, post hospitalization, we would see him for the first couple months. We saw him every other week to closely monitor how she was doing, what was happening, and make sure that there wasn't an opportunity for relapse right away, which is a possibility with
Yeah.
GB. So anyway, we're going through all this, and after one of our appointments, rather, he released everybody else from the room, and he goes, "Hey Tim, hold back just a moment." And I was like, "Oh, okay." And so I'm thinking he wanted to ask me something about my daughter in particular, without her there. And so I'm like, "Sure, yeah. What's going on?" He says, "You doing okay?" "Yeah, I'm great." He goes, "No, are you doing okay? Mentally, emotionally?" He goes, "Are you sleeping at night?" And that question there almost broke me to tears, because I don't know how he noticed it, but he did. And he said, "You need to go talk with somebody." And I was like, "I think I'll be okay." He says, he goes, "But you're not. You're faking it." He goes, "And to most people, you probably look like you're pulling it off." He goes, "But you're not. You need to talk with somebody." So I went home and I talked with my wife, and because we got into the car. She's like, "What did the doctor want?" So, "I'll talk to you when we get home." She's like, "Is everything okay?" I'm like, yeah, it's fine. I'll talk to you when we get home." So we're about 35-40 minutes away from our house where the doctor's office is. And we get home and we go into our room and we talk about it. I'm like, "Well, this is what he wants me to do." She's like, "It's about time. Can I make the phone call? Who are we talking to?" you know, and like I said, when I started off with this, is that it wasn't that I wasn't listening to her, but it came across differently from this doctor. And it wasn't because he was a man. I want to make that abundantly clear, because if we're going to talk about people that I respect the hell out of my wife.
Mhm.
And I have taken her advice on so many things in life, and will continue to take her advice on so many things, because she's so incredibly smart. I can't tell you why it hit differently when I talked to this doctor, but it did. And the importance of me reaching out for some level of mental health help just came across differently. And so, yeah, so I went in and I started into counseling.
That's amazing. That is amazing, buddy. I kid you not. There's a few points, like while you're telling me everything to tell the truth, I was starting to choke up as well. It's just the fact that I'm putting myself in your shoes, and just to see that, and I'm imagining again your daughter just in the ICU with the cords and all that instrument hooked up, and I've told this on my previous podcast. I had a nephew that passed away, and he was 2 years old, and
Oh
walking into
man.
the surgery room, I saw all the cords, the machine, the people didn't even turn off the machine. It was still beeping, like that beep, the long beep going off. And just to go in there, and I looked at the doctor, I'm like, "Can you please just turn that off?" And it was
Hmm.
just, and again, it's to your point. It's like, as a man, we choose to, at that point, to tell the truth, it was my dad, my mom was there, my sister, my other sister, which was the mother of my nephew, and the dad as well was there, and everyone was crying, and I held back everything because, as you mentioned, it's that stigma that we have as men, just to hold back. And the only thing I could think of was like, I have to be strong for everybody.
Right.
And
I went through the same thing in the hospital. When the crap was hitting the fan, so to speak, and everything was going wrong, and then people are falling apart and crying. I was the
yeah,
one who was stoic and stone, and I would hold off until everything was done, the decisions were made, and this is how we were going to move forward. And the hospital has what they call a quiet area where you
yeah,
can go, and I would go in there and I would shut the door off by myself, and I would ugly cry.
yeah.
And it was breathtaking at times. Just I would barely get the door shut, and I
Hmm.
would just absolutely break down. I'm still at the point where a couple months later, my dad had to have a small heart procedure done, and we went to the hospital, and I almost had a panic attack, A, walking into the hospital,
Hmm.
B, in the recovery room, the beeping of the machine. I can't stand to hear the beep of the machines anymore. My I I don't even like the beep of the microwave anymore. Okay. I shut off all anything that beeps, I shut off all noises. My phone is on silent 100% of the time anymore. I don't like the sounds of machines. It makes me uncomfortable at night because I got used to sleeping in the room with her, and I would have to listen for the sounds of the machines. At night now, I can't sleep unless I have headphones in. I
Yeah.
still can't. It's it's kind of a crap thing, but there's ways, there's all these little things that you don't think about until you're in the moment and in the situation, and then you're trying to figure out how to navigate through it. And there's not really a guidebook that's going to say,
No.
okay, when you hit this problem, here's how you do it. um you know and that's one of the things that you learn to that you that it's important to talk about,
Yep.
because one of the things that I was taught in therapy, the therapist and I used cognitive behavioral therapy, or CBT, and I found that cognitive behavioral therapy was very effective with me. And one of the things that she used was something called stop therapy.
Mm.
And it's one of the most and when she explained it to me, I'll be honest with you, I laughed because it sounds so simplistic. I'm like, really? I'm paying you to tell me this. And that what she told me was, when you think about negative things, just out loud or under your breath, say stop, and then say three positive things. And I'm like, this is the biggest bunch of malarkey. Are you kidding me? This is what I'm here for? You're going to tell me to, oh, stop. Yeah, okay. If I could have stopped, I would have stopped already. I wouldn't have had to come here. But when you buy in, it works. It's like if you play sports, there's coach may have a team philosophy on how he wants
Yep.
to attack an offense or a defense. And you being a hockey fan, you'll understand this. That this coach may have a different defensive philosophy than the last coach, but if the team buys in and they wrap their heads around it and they try and they work inside of that system, if it's effective, it can, and it has proof that it can work, and you buy in, it'll work, it'll do the job. And
Mm-hmm.
so that's the same thing with CBT. It's one of those things where some of the things sound so simplistic, and honestly, I laugh at some of them, I really do. But on the other hand, I also, there's that buy-in,
Mm-hmm.
buy into the therapy, let it work for you. I find that if you work with it instead of against it, you have a better opportunity, a better chance of having some measure of success. I mean, I'm not cured, I'm not perfect, I'm not healed. That's just the way it is. But what else are you going to do, right?
Very true. And you're absolutely right on a few of those things that you mentioned. And I honestly believe that if when I'm going to use that stigma of men, when we go through things like this or anything that we need to get our emotions out, we shouldn't be holding it in, because once we hold it in, we get into those trying times, as in the PTSD of those beeping of the sounds. Because I honestly believe, like, if during that time when you were going through those emotions, when you need to talk and to release everything that was on your mind and within you, you wouldn't be suffering as much as you are right now, because
Right.
already you have got that out of the system. The biggest thing I've learned through my podcasting, and honestly, I've only started about 9 months ago, and I've talked to such wonderful people. The biggest thing is you have to accept. And once we accept we're in a situation, and as you
Mm-hmm.
mentioned, that power, when you know that you're powerless, that's when you need to seek others and seek others for help, seek others for leaning on, because at the end of the day, we're humans, and we do have our limitations, both physically and emotional.
Oh, absolutely.
And like you mentioned, your wife, I'm pretty sure she is a great woman, and I know she's been there for you since day one. And those things you have to have in your life. It does not saying go out and grab a spouse, but you have to find the right person for you. They
Oh
always
yeah.
mention a soulmate, but you don't have to be married to have a soulmate. You could have a close friend in which you're able to lean on, someone that really understands you, someone that gives you that encouragement. And then you mentioned the philosophy. I remember we were talking about earlier, I watch basketball, but I remember I'm a big Toronto Raptors fan. One of the coaches, Dwayne Casey, had a big rock.
Hmm.
And what he mentioned, every time the guys go there, they say he told them to touch the rock. The reason why he means like pound the rock, as in when you're going out there, pretend there's a rock in front of you, you guys attack the rock, attack the basket as much as you can. So those things I remember. I played football during high school, and this was back in the day when Channel 47 was a superstation, and that was my number, was 47. And one of those things was just those small, like those names and such or stuff like that, was I'll go on in the field and my coach would slap me on the back. He's like, remember, you're the superstation. Go out there and show me how super you are. And it was fun like that. And I played outside linebacker, and then my buddy played linebacker, and he was number 50. So he was a space station. So together when we went out, we were called the super space. And it was like,
Nice.
we had this like charge with us, right? It's
Sure,
those
sure.
things, it's those things that give us those inner strength when we need it to dig deep within ourselves to actually move forward and push forward in times that we honestly couldn't. Playing defense in both life and in like life in your case, and I'm my reference in the sports, it's not the same but somewhat the same in a sense. And I say that because there's times when, again, your opponent is double the size of you.
Hmm.
Back in grade 11, I was playing, I was 114 pounds. I was like 5'5" around there. So it's really small for a defense person. These people that I was going against in offense were like hitting 200 pounds and like 6'3", 6'4". And just knowing that, hey, I was in defense, I need to stop. I had to make sure no one passes me. And if someone's going to pass me and the ball goes, I'm going to run as fast as I can, grab their legs and pull them down as much with all the strength I have. And again, in your case, it's that you building that defense, saying, yes, I'm despite me being powerless at this moment, you still have to put on a brave face. You still have to pay the bills. Despite everything,
Right,
bills have to get paid. Food had to be put on the table.
right.
And then you mentioned, I believe you have another son, if I'm not
I
mistaken.
have two. Yeah.
You have two other, and then again, you have to be strong for them as well. Despite
Oh yeah.
everything, it's not like you just give up everything and say, okay, my main focus is just on my daughter getting well. Maybe 90% is, but the other 10% has to be divided
Oh
among
sure.
everything else that you need for your family's sake. So it is hard. It's very, very hard.
Yeah, and two, the biggest thing that I want to make sure that people understand is that I don't have a poor me attitude about any of
Mhm.
this. I understand that, you know, um, the proverbial saying crap happens. And that unfortunately that's more true than I would like it to be. But on the other hand, I also have a saying that and I've said this to my kids over and over and over again. It's kind of the mantra of our family, second only to focused on forward. Because that honestly, that's the reason why I named my show Focused on
Mhm.
Forward, is because so in my 30s I had a heart condition, and one of the sayings was my wife and I was that we're going to focus on moving forward. That's all we can do. We can't sit here and bellyache about what's going on today. We're going to focus on moving forward. When we were in the hospital with my daughter, we're going to focus on moving forward. So when it came time to name the show, it was pretty easy. Well, we're
Mhm.
going to talk about focused. We're going to be focused on forward. So, but the other saying that my kids are probably sick of hearing, honestly, um, and I was told this when I was about 16 years of age. It's the best single piece of advice that I've ever been given. It's the best thing. It doesn't matter how you fall down. It matters that you get up.
Yeah.
So even when you get up, if you have to lean on something else or lean on someone else to help you move forward, you still got up. You're still putting in the fight. You're still putting in the work. And that applies to so many things, because it could be an issue with mental health and you have to lean on therapist or medication. And there's no shame in either of those things. I want to make that abundantly clear.
Mhm.
There's no shame in taking care of yourself. Whether we when we talk about fixing vehicles and things, we take a car to the mechanic. Are we ashamed that we had to put a new muffler on the car, or that we had to get a tune up or do it? Why are we ashamed that we have to do the same thing for our bodies? Our bodies deteriorate, break down, they wear out, and sometimes things have to be replaced. We're not ashamed when we have to get a new knee, or things along those lines. why are we ashamed that we have to get some help to help ourselves, help our brain, the thing that controls everything of our body? Why wouldn't we take as best care of that as we can? So there's no shame in being medicated. There's no shame in having therapy. The shame is allowing the influence of others to tell you that it's wrong to do that, because you deserve it. Your family deserves it. If you have, close friends and people around you, they deserve it because they're all part of your life. And so why wouldn't you take care of yourself the absolute best way that you can, so that you can be there for your family day in, day out? If you love them and you want to be there for them, please seek out mental health help. Talk to your doctors, get the help that's required. Don't let the world around you tell you that it's a weakness to do so. It's a strength. It's a strength to know that you need help.
I love that. So I got to show you something. Well, show the guests, whoever's going to watch this. This is my personal Instagram page. I'm going to click on my story and it just says, keep moving forward. And I posted that 19 hours ago. And then that was my thought. That was my thought going to bed last night. I'm just like, it just kept on playing in my mind. It was just keep moving forward, keep moving forward. I'm just like, I have to post this. I don't know why. I'm like, maybe a lot of my posts that I put on the inspirational, the post, it's mainly for me, but I feel like there's someone else that's going to see it, be like, you know what, thank you for that. And it's funny because as soon as I woke up, I saw like 2 messages. Hey, I needed that. And then even now, like when I'm talking to, I got one person, one of my friends that lives in Sydney, just woke up about 30 minutes ago, sorry, 10 minutes ago. And like, buddy, like, thank you for this. Like, I really needed that. I'm just like, I'm like, awesome. And then now you said it, I'm just like, in almost the same in the same context, is just, it's that we have to keep moving forward. And one thing I've always said is I add an extra verbiage to that, was despite moving forward, always go up. When you're moving forward, move up as well, because you can move forward and down. I'm just like, no, move forward and up, and never look. You could sometimes, there's times where you look back. We have to that's the biggest thing. We when you move forward, you do reflect back, and therefore you do look back. And when you do look back, it's you're the only reason why you look back, it should strictly just be for reflecting, but do not live in the past. It's a quick glance, but your main focus, and it will always be forward.
I liken that much to driving a vehicle. If you're driving a vehicle, what do you pay more attention to? The window in front of you or the rear view mirror?
Front.
Yeah, you have to. If you pay attention to the rear view mirror and that's all you're watching, you're going to crash. You're headed for a crash, and it's not going to be good or safe or healthy for anybody. And so it's the same thing with our own lives and our own mental health. If we're always looking in the past and always trying to dig up something from the past, we're going to have a crash. It's when we start moving forward and we look forward and we're moving forward. You see, but when we reflect on things, we look back for that reflection. It helps us avoid things in the future. Oh, I went through this before. I saw this before. I can avoid this in the future. So as long as we don't crane our necks too far back to look into the rear view mirror and we move forward, it's not an unhealthy thing. Very
true. It's very, very true. Tim, I always like to end on golden nuggets, and this whole conversation has been golden nuggets. Would like to, you want to add anything to it?
Just again, a plea for everyone who's listening, man, woman, child. If you need mental health help, please do not delay. Don't hold back. There's no shame. Go get the help you need. It's going to benefit you. It's going to make your life better. It's going to make your family's life better.
I'm going to end it on that. Thank you so much.
Well, thank you, David. This has been fun.